Starting a new business is an incredible rush. You've got the product, the brand, the whole vision in your head. But all that excitement and hard work can come crumbling down if you don't build it on a solid foundation. So today, we're going to talk about the bedrock, the essential ethical and legal stuff that turns a great idea into a business that can actually last.
So you have it, right? The big one. That idea that just keeps you up at night. You could see it clear as day, you know it's going to change things, and you are ready to hit the ground running. But just wait a second. Because that brilliant idea is, frankly, worthless if it's not built on something solid. Think about it like you're building a massive skyscraper. The design could be genius, but if the foundation is weak, the whole thing is coming down. So today, we're going to lay the 4 essential cornerstones that will make sure your venture is built to last. Okay, before we even think about legal documents or paperwork, we have to start with something way more fundamental: your company's moral direction. We're calling this your ethical compass, and it is the first cornerstone for a reason. It's going to guide every single decision you make from this point forward.
You know, a strong ethical culture isn't some motivational poster you hang in the break room. It's the actual DNA of your company. And it starts with you, the founder, living those values. You have to lead by example. Then, you make it official with a clear code of conduct that everyone can understand. And finally, you keep it alive with real, ongoing ethics training. This gives your team a playbook for how to handle those tricky situations that will inevitably pop up. All right, with our ethical compass pointing true north, we can move on to cornerstone number 2, putting together your legal toolkit. Getting these tools in place from day one isn't just a, good idea. It's absolutely crucial protection that you just can't afford to put off.
And a huge part of that toolkit is the right lawyer. Honestly, finding a good lawyer is a lot like finding a co-founder. You need someone who just gets the startup world. So don't just pick the first name you find online. Talk to a few of them. Make sure they've been through this process before. And be super clear about fees right up front so there are no nasty surprises. And at the end of the day, trust your gut. It's a really powerful guide here.
Now, if you have a co-founder or co-founders, listen up. This is probably the single most important document you will ever create. A founder's agreement is basically a prenup for your business. It forces you to have all those awkward, tough conversations right now about who owns what, who does what, and what happens if someone wants out. Having this document can save you from a messy, business-killing fight down the road.
And in that agreement, there are 5 non-negotiable things you have to cover. You've got to spell out exactly how the ownership is split. You need to identify what intellectual property everyone is bringing to the table. You need to define who is responsible for what. And, crucially, you need a plan for how you'll settle arguments without going to court and a clear buyback clause that says what happens to a founder's shares if they leave. Okay, time for our 3rd cornerstone. This one is all about getting the official green light to actually operate your business. It's about navigating the world of bureaucracy to get your hands on the right business licenses and permits.
And what you'll find is that these things are layered. You might need them from the federal, state, and local governments. For instance, the federal government cares if you're in industries like alcohol or firearms. Your state is definitely going to want you to have sales tax permits, and your local city or town might have rules for everything from the sign you hang outside to your hours of operation. The bottom line here? Do your homework. Never ever just assume you don't need a permit for something.
And that brings us to our 4th and final cornerstone. And this one is huge. It's about choosing the legal blueprint for your company. Its legal structure. This single decision impacts everything: your taxes, your personal liability, even your ability to raise money. So let's start with the most basic one, the sole proprietorship. If you're a freelancer or you're starting a business all by yourself, you might already be one and not even know it. The key thing to get here is that in the eyes of the law, there is absolutely no separation between you and the business. You are the business.
Now, on the plus side, it's incredibly easy and cheap to get started, and you have 100% control. But there's a massive drawback, and for a lot of people, it's a total deal breaker: unlimited personal liability. And this means that if your business gets sued or racks up a bunch of debt, they can come after your personal stuff. We're talking your savings account, your car, even your house. There's literally no legal wall protecting your personal assets from your business liabilities. That's a risk most founders just aren't willing to take.
So what if you're not going it alone? Well, if you have one or more co-founders and you don't file any special paperwork to become a corporation or an LLC, then by default, you're what's called a partnership. This is just where 2 or more people decide to join forces and run a business together.
And just like a sole proprietorship, it's pretty easy to set up and you get to avoid double taxation. But it also shares that same critical, terrifying flaw unlimited personal liability. And in a partnership, this risk gets even bigger because you're not just liable for your own actions and debts, you're liable for your partners too.
Now, there is a variation on this called a limited partnership, which creates two classes of partners. You have the general partners. They're the ones actively running the show and taking on all that unlimited liability. But then you have limited partners, who are basically just passive investors. Their risk, their liability, is capped at whatever amount of money they put into the business.
So, how do you get that protection for your personal assets? Well, you create a completely separate legal entity. The classic way to do this is with a C corporation. In the eyes of the law, the corporation becomes its own person, totally distinct from its owners who are called shareholders.
The huge, game-changing advantage here is limited liability. The company's debts belong to the company, which shields the shareholders' personal assets. It also makes it way easier to raise capital from serious investors. But there's always a trade-off, right? The big one here is double taxation. The corporation pays taxes on its profits, and then you pay taxes again on your personal income when those profits are paid out to you.
To try and solve that double taxation problem, there's something called an S corporation. It's a special tax status that lets the company's profits and losses pass directly through to the owners, kind of like a partnership. But it comes with a lot of really strict rules. You can only have up to 100 shareholders, they all have to be US citizens, and you can only have one class of stock.
Which brings us to what has become an incredibly popular choice for a lot of modern startups, the Limited Liability Company, or LLC. And as the name pretty much says, it's a hybrid structure designed to give you the best of both worlds.
With an LLC, you get that critical liability protection of a corporation, so your personal assets are safe. But you also get the tax advantages of a partnership, which means you avoid that whole double taxation issue. It's way more flexible than an S-corp, but it is a bit more complex to set up than a simple sole proprietorship. And you have to be careful, because the rules can be pretty different from state to state.
So there you have it. That's the blueprint, your 4 cornerstones. It's not just a pile of documents, it's a complete foundation. You've got your ethical compass to guide you, your legal toolkit to protect you, your licenses to give you the right to operate, and your business structure to define how you're going to grow. Building a company is an act of creation, for sure, but it also has to be an act of foresight. So I'll leave you with this to think about. Of these 4 cornerstones we just talked about, which one do you think ambitious founders are most likely to skip over or neglect in that frantic rush to get their idea out into the world? And more importantly, what's the ultimate price they might pay for it?